Our next speaker hardly needs an introduction. Satish Kanwar is the VP and GM of Channels at Shopify, where he leads the development of e-commerce, retail, and shopping experiences. Satish led Shopify's strategic shift from online store software to the multi-channel commerce platform we know it is today. And he's formed strategic partnerships with Facebook, Amazon, Google, among others. Satish is an angel investor, advisor to the City of Toronto, and previous organizer of TEDx Toronto in 2016. He's definitely not an underachiever. He was named to Forbes 30 under 30. Ladies and gentlemen, Satish Kanwar.
Good morning, everyone. Really great to see everyone here today, and excited to talk to you a bit more about our favorite topic, product. But we're going to do that a little bit differently this morning. You know, as someone who's been a product leader, product manager, and product designer over the last decade, I think you're going to hear from a lot of smart people and yourselves with each other about what it takes to actually do the function of product management and build exciting products. But I want to take a step back and talk about something a bit more fundamental today, which is really about the impact of diversity on product and how we approach the way we build our products, why we build them, and who we get involved inside that process. And in particular, why this is important for you, your product team, and most importantly, your product's customers, to build diversity into the way you do your work. So for those that might not be aware, Shopify is a commerce platform that helps businesses start, run, and grow their e-commerce. We're a Canadian company, and we have over 1,000 people right here in the Toronto-Waterloo corridor. And businesses of all sizes, small and large, use Shopify to start and scale their e-commerce business in online, mobile, social, and physical retail. Shopify is now used by over 600,000 businesses around the world, more than half of which identify as women now, in over 175 countries. And if there's one thing I've learned over the last 5 or so years of doing this, is that we have to get better for our customers to get better too. And of course, our mission reinforces this inside the organization, which is that we have to make decisions that lead us to creating more entrepreneurs in the world. So all of this comes back to our topic of today. And I'll be the first to admit that we're not anywhere near perfect at Shopify. We're behind on some measures of diversity, but we're working hard to improve this. And we find it incredibly important to open up a dialogue with our peers about why that's important and how we think about this inside of our business. So I'll share some examples from my personal experiences and observations, from my time as a founder, and of course, from my time in Shopify's own product growth. We'll talk about the impact of diversity on product, so what it means to truly build for your customers, diversity of teams, how we bring together different perspectives, as well as diversity of work, how your culture impacts the way you succeed at this. And we'll have time for questions. So as a Canadian, born and raised here in Scarborough, for those that are familiar, diversity was always center stage as a topic for me because it was obvious to us in our principles and values. But this didn't necessarily translate itself in the most obvious way later on as work. You know, a big reason in my personal experience was a center focus on ethnicity as a dimension of diversity, which is important, but a great example of something that is only one and a more visible dimension of diversity that we see. You know, it's important to understand that there's a lot more than these commonly discussed and measured factors that we talk about in diversity, like race, gender, and sexual orientation. Now, these are insanely important, especially in tech, where they're absurdly underrepresented. But our values, beliefs, expectations, backgrounds, skills, experiences, all of these less measured and more interchangeable dimensions, things that grow with you as you grow in your lifetime, these are equally important to that complete spectrum of person that shows up at work to build your product. And they collectively make up the experiences and perspectives we bring into our product teams. So this is a diversity wheel from Johns Hopkins and their Diversity Leadership Council. It's one of those really simple tools that we use as a Shopify leadership team to think about this. So the center of the wheel represents those internal dimensions, the ones that we often talk about. They're permanent, they're visible, they're obvious to us. While the outside represents those dimensions that are acquired. These are the ones I referred to that can change with you over time. And you have to be able to understand and gauge how you, your teams, and the people that you interact with, how they are against this entire spectrum of diversity. And it's the combination of these things that makes each person that works on your product unique. Now, this isn't only important because of those obvious moral reasons. It's also because this is the best way for us to build products for our customers, products that can scale. So the value of what we create as product people has to reflect the customers our product intends to serve. That's the real economic value of diversity. It's about doing good business. It's obvious to say that you are not your customer. And this is something that comes up a lot, but for more deeply and intentional reasons. A lot of us as product people feel like we're building our product for people just like you, people just like me, that I'm really close to the problem set. This is the problem I personally had. How many founders do you hear say that? The reality is that that kind of mentality doesn't scale with you. And the customers you serve will change faster than you do. So take a look at some examples. If you started a product because you had the personal problem, your distance from that problem is going to grow as you solve the problem itself. And on top of that, you'll have way too much domain knowledge about this problem that your customers and potential customers won't have. So to say that you are your customer is also not recognizing that you no longer have the same knowledge as your customer does. Second, if you think you're great at lean startup, I'm great at talking to customers, I always get customer feedback. This isn't going to sustain as the rest of your team and business grows. Like, you have to be able to bring other people into that process. And as your customer segments scale, you want to bring your product to more types of people, you'll only start to hear what they say, not what they mean. Because again, now you have a different level of shared understanding about that product and the problem. And if you're really trying to build a long-term business, you have to bring others into the fold in being able to make product decisions with you. And now all of a sudden, you being the customer and setting a vision a decade old is no longer enough. You need the people that you brought into your team to be able to reflect that vision as well. And the more empathy they have, the better they'll solve that customer problem. So you are not your customer for many reasons. Let's see how this applies at Shopify. You know, at the very beginning, over 10 years ago, Shopify was built by a technical founder for a technical audience with a male-dominant customer base, primarily in English-speaking North America. Very specific. That doesn't at all represent the picture of our product today. We've had to grow to recognize, as I said earlier, that now over half of the entrepreneurs on the platform identify as women, which wasn't the case just 5 years ago. For us, this is also recognizing that our product has shifted out of the early adopter market and into the public mass, which is a different type of now customer segment that we have to understand. We also know that the age of entrepreneurship and our customers are changing. It wasn't so long ago that over half of our customers are under 30. Now over half identify as over 35 and across the entire spectrum of age groups. And of course, some of our fastest growth is happening in cultures and geographies that are entirely different from the one that we live in. However amazing and blessed we are to be in Canada, Canada is not the same as Asia, Africa, or South America. So our customers are extremely varied, and that means our organization, the way we build product, has to change with it too. What we did before in that 10-year spectrum to serve that original customer base can't be the same way we think about serving the customer base of today. So we have to stay in tune with these changing customer needs. When's the last time you went back to think about who the current makeup of your customer is? How often should you go back to think about how that makeup has changed? Instead, we have to identify this and see it as a risk and an opportunity to continue growing the way we build products for the diversity of customers we serve. So I'll show you a few simple examples from our product design team. Now, to warm you up, everyone will be familiar with this. This is the Facebook friend icon from not too long ago. And as you can see, an icon representing a male stands before the icon representing a female and is given more prominence inside of the icon that billions of people experience every day. And of course, it took a savvy young product designer at Facebook, probably a woman, I believe a woman, to recognize this and propose a simple change, something that put them on a more equal playing field and reflected as more gender neutral. Now, this is a pretty obvious one in hindsight, and you would say as an organization, you should have probably caught that a bit sooner. But remember that spectrum, that diversity wheel I shared with you. There's a lot of other ways that our subtle biases and our understanding of diversity impacts these things. Here's some thinking we saw in our own product. Here's a pretty typical illustration of a man with a beard, boxes, and a truck. And it was used in some of our shipping tools. Seems pretty typical from where I stand and what I experience when a UPS driver shows up at my house. But internationally, a big UPS truck is probably not the way that packages are arriving at people's doors. And a man with a beard might not be all that common or even inclusive. Of course, it took someone with experience outside of Canada to first realize this, from experiencing a living package delivery in a completely different type of culture. When we understand how diversity plays a role in our actual product experiences, we can ask ourselves these more meaningful and deeper layered questions. If you look at this illustration, you'll see that it now suggests no specific age, race, culture, orientation, even experience, education, economic status is all blended away from the practical elements of what it's trying to communicate. I see a person in a workshop with a hammer building something. And while almost everything shown here in their actions would bias you to seeing a person that should resemble a male, bench, hammer, building, the best part is they purposely provided features that suggested it would be a female. And in Canada, we're used to seeing visible diversity and breaking of these gender norms. But even that's not necessarily the case everywhere. Some areas and cultures are more traditional, and they might be taken aback by something like this if it's the first thing that they're greeted with in their experience. So this poses an interesting question on us as product owners and product decision makers. Do we morph to our customers' values and the perspective that they come from, or do we propagate our own Canadian values and perspective on the whole world and all the diversity of customers that use our products? There's no right answer. So there's many examples of how this plays through in our product experiences. So I could go on forever here. You know, our traditional culture and norms. First name comes before last name. In Japan, that's pretty offensive. Last name should come before first name. It was a while before we caught that one. You need a credit card to use Shopify. That supposes two things. One, you live in a market where credit cards are common. Two, that you have the financial privilege of having a credit card, which also takes place in North America. So if we're trying to create entrepreneurship, that supposes we're doing so for people that have the privilege of having access to a credit card. So if we have to work to bring our product to many more segments, many more people, and grow to represent customers across that whole spectrum of the diversity wheel, we have to look at the ways it deep roots itself in our product. And that's not just about having a male and female figure in your homepage or your product. So there's a lot more examples, big and small, where diversity impacts this product's success. But the important thing is to catch these examples. You have to be aware that they exist, that there are deeper layers than what you're probably accustomed to hearing about when we look at diversity from marketing or visuals or purely from the perspective of visible diversity dimensions that I talked about. And the best way to do this, the best hack, is to build a diverse team. So let's talk about that. In the end, I know, that it's probably impossible to overcome bias. Even with amazing training, a lot of self-awareness, even being born, raised, brought up in and working and building a company in Canada and having those principles and values, this runs really deep in us as humans. And so the diversity of your team, open communication and conversation of different perspectives is the only real long-term sustainable way to do this, to overcome bias. And achieving this requires a real investment of time, effort, energy, money to build these balanced teams. But here's the biggest challenge in product that I see. I'm a non-technical product person who comes from a background that suggests I have no business doing product. But every job posting I ever see for a product person requires 3+ years of product management experience. So how do you build a product team if you're looking for of this balanced perspective, if you're looking for people with product management experience? If that were the case when I joined a Shopify, I wouldn't be standing before you here today. Like, how many people here went to school for product management? You can't go to school for the jobs that we do. It doesn't exist. Hopefully it should, sidebar. And finding product managers then is not a question about this background experience or about schools and training. It's about identifying people with the ability to make sound decisions. And decision making can come from many non-typical backgrounds in your experience. That's what's most critical in product. That's what we're entrusting product people to do. And these people go on to become the nucleus of your product and your organization's decisions if you're building a product-first organization. So I'll share a few of the ways that we find talent from non-traditional sources that might not have product management experience, 101. Simple, a way from my perspective that we've done 5 times over at Shopify is we acquire different perspectives. If we find a difficult time building a perspective in a discipline or of a specific type of leadership or in a specific geography, we use M&A as a tool to build that into the organization. And I say that because founders and teams, people are attracted to work with like minds. So if there's a certain discipline or certain context of diversity in the dimension that you don't have available, it's probably because people don't want to work at your organization because they don't see anyone like them in thought or in form that exists in the organization. So this is a part of the process where you have to think creatively about how you build that into your team. At Shopify, we've acquired more than 5 talent companies for talent over time that have each brought us different perspectives, different disciplines, different dimensions. And of course, I myself was acquired to bring design and product perspective into Shopify at a point when it was a primarily engineering-driven organization. We also do a lot of things to activate decision-making and build that in the organization. Best example for us is Hack Days. Every quarter, we take 2 days with everyone in the company to give them an opportunity to step outside the shell of their specific role, whatever their title, job, and responsibilities might be, to do anything they want that they think can benefit our customers. And what this does is it allows people to work and ideas to collide with teams and individuals that would never have worked together before, or everyone to bring forward product ideas and product decisions that wouldn't have had an opportunity in their team. So a way of releasing the shackles, to say, of the job expectations and day-to-day expectations we have, to really see and identify ideas, creativity, perspective, and of course, potential product people in the organization by letting them give it a try. And for us, this is also a representation that everyone in the company works on product. So how do we bring product decision-making forward? And of course, use this to identify amazing talent from within our company that we can move into product management. That's ultimately what spurred a new program we started a few years ago called our Apm Program. And the Apm Program was a way of taking primarily existing Shopify employees, marketers, designers, customer support, IT specialists, who demonstrated that type of decision-making and helped bring this balanced perspective by giving them those fundamental skills and training and 101s that we would otherwise look for in the 3+ years of experience externally. And that's been a great way of unlocking potential and growing the balance of our product decision makers in the organization. How long does it take you to find and hire a capable product person? How long does it take you to give them the context of your organization? Now compare that with retraining someone in your organization who has the trust, the relationships, the context, the drive, the belief in your vision, and is lacking some of the obvious skills that might be more easily and practically trained. So usually the answer is already there at home. And we're super proud to have joined 9 other product organizations in the city of Toronto to be a part of an APM Toronto program that brings people in that exact situation from all these organizations together to do shared skill development, shared training, and really cross-pollinate ideas across companies. Massive organizations like Google and Facebook can have these intensive programs in the Valley that do this type of training within. For us, we can aggregate resources to invest in the future of product leaders and product decision makers together. Again, we all win when we all win. So great program, and shout outs to the folks that have made this happen. And even when we have to go out to the market to hire product owners and product decision makers, we have to be more intentional. On our job postings on our careers page is only a subset of the product roles that we seek, because then only the people that raise their hand up for these jobs will be the ones that we ever interview. So we have to go out to the market more actively to find these non-traditional backgrounds and find people that would be suitable for our products. Again, we recruit in our own image. Talent looks for organizations that reflect their own image too. And so you have to bring that match of perspectives to the table to really find all of that rich talent. And we live today in a candidates market, not a companies market. So there's lots of best practices to improve the way you approach your hiring process. I'm not an expert in those, but I see them happen. Structured interview panels, well-balanced job descriptions, strong employer branding, research on sourcing, more intentional ways of marking and recording interview results and feedback. What I will say is all of this is 10 times more important when it comes to product leadership, because the leadership in your company set the tone for the behavior of everyone else in the product decisions they make. So last but not least, let's talk about diversity of work. And so when you bring these balanced teams to the table in your organization, that really is just step one. That's like the entry cost to building a balanced perspective and scalable value in the products that you create. Inclusion is what unlocks the power of diversity. And what does that mean? By finding and recognizing and welcoming the differences in people on our teams is how we create a supporting culture that allows them to bring that perspective into the products that we create. So you have to make this distinction, because it's very easy to assume just having people in the company will naturally allow that perspective to make it into your products. But you also have to create an environment where people feel like that's valued, where they're not all folding in, per se, to a belief set or value system that you already have. And in my experience, you can learn a lot about a company's culture from the way that it makes decisions. Here are a few examples of how we try to hold ourselves accountable to making more inclusive decisions with our teams. The first is that we want to have the right people in the room. So as mentioned earlier on this morning, is every product team we build has to have a product, design, and engineering voice as an equal owner inside the decision-making process. Because right there starts an ability for different perspectives in that most simple and fundamental way to play a role in the product decision-making process. We also have to create space for the right types of conversations, which means that, as a company, and as many of us, we embody strong opinions, and we have to ensure those are weakly held. Meaning that we have to be able to make decisions and move forward, but stay open to new information as it presents itself through the organization. And this helps us stay and move quickly, but by recognizing that this is the way we think, it makes it comfortable for anyone in the company to challenge what they might see as a long-standing decision or belief or direction that the company is taking. At the end of the day, companies often talk about, and I shared earlier, closing the distance to the front line of your customers. But a simple way of doing that is by letting decisions happen in your teams with people that are closest to those customers. And so we really work hard to stay away from this command and control chain of decision making, where we believe the best decisions can be made by the people at the top. Now, that might be the way the most decisions that you're personally comfortable with can be made inside your company, but it's not the way that the most customer-centric decisions could be made. We try to index for letting teams make those decisions with those perspectives in their teams, and then correct through feedback and learning and iteration over time. It's the beauty of software. Everything can change. We also, as a company, don't require people to use specific tools or processes. There's no one project management tool, or one design feedback tool, or one way of approaching the structure of a sprint. We let product, technical, and design leads in those teams decide what they want to do, whether it's a whiteboard in their pod or some crazy enterprise tool that they want us to get. They're allowed to make decisions that suit the best way that their teams know how to work, which is great because we might have a team that exists across 3 time zones in 3 cities, and we might have a team that's 4 people that sit together and like whiteboards. And by mandating a company process for how they do their work doesn't allow us to best capture the perspective of the people that are doing the job. We also have to think about the way people process information. And so, we keep these simple little pyramids in all of our meeting rooms as gentle reminders and nudges of things in active conversation. So people know that, hey, not everyone in a big group setting is going to be comfortable giving their feedback or opinion. Why don't you send out a questionnaire later on? Or, hey, why don't you appoint a devil's advocate of someone that's typically agreeable so you have people playing a more intentional, diverse role inside that group discussion? Just nudges and reminders of things we all know, but we miss in our day-to-day. Paper on a table, great hack. And we also even just design our physical environments to be conducive to this. There's meeting rooms that look like boardrooms. They have their purpose. There's meeting rooms that look like your home kitchen. There's private spaces and pods that you can get away in and have a one-on-one conversation. There's open creative spaces where you can invite feedback from anyone that's walking by. And our physical spaces have a lot to do with the way we feel comfortable in expressing ourselves in our different dimensions. One of the tools we use, and one of my favorites, is this Enneagram, which is a test that brings out these different hidden dimensions inside of people and the way they like to work. If you're familiar with it, you'll know how simple and helpful it is at sparking the right conversations. If you're not, it's something that I invite you to take a look at. There's 9 different essentially personality types, which represent different worldviews and archetypes of people. And it just has given us a common language for talking about the way people think. So when new teams are forming, we invite people to bring their Enneagram to the table and talk, have pre-mortems, talk about how you all work, how you like to work, what perspectives you bring to the table. It's a big part of growing self-awareness in our teams and a way of just acknowledging that those different dimensions exist beyond what we see at the table of how people think. So if you're familiar, I'm a personality type 3 and 8, achiever and challenger. I'll let you Google what that means. And lastly, while we're headquartered here in Canada, and that's benefited us from accessing a lot of diverse types of talent. We're also now have employees all over the world, some remote and some in office. So this is both greatly expanding our skills and our perspectives, but also helping us learn about how we need to adapt as an organization to really build this balanced way of working and capture the best intent of everyone in the organization. So simple things, habits that we've built better of, when to use email or Slack, when to do a meeting or send a document, and even now when we use an internal podcast instead of all company town hall. Different ways of distributing information. So at the end of the day, to be an authentic product leader yourself, your job is to enable others to be themselves. That's at the end of the day, the work that we have to do. We have to enable the best product decision-making that can come from the people in our organization, and that's the role that we play as product owners and product leaders. If I had told you at the start of this that there was a guaranteed way to build winning companies, empower employees, inspire innovation, and retain your top talent, you'd be asking for the answer. And it's been there all along, and you guys know this. It's that diverse teams build better products, which build better companies. It's been proven time and time again, but we often mistake what that means for simply having more visible dimensions of diversity at the decision-making table, measuring our leadership team, measuring our board, measuring the hires that we make. You have to understand that what really goes into this winning formula is understanding the full dimension of diversity and having a commitment to making that a part of the way you work as an organization. When you work towards building your product, I hope you'll think more about how that impacts your customers and your employees and the way you approach the work that you do. That there are many perspectives to making this a successful formula for you. And that you understand that everyone in the company has to be responsible for this. It's a commitment that you make that you have to enable through the organization. You can't just make underrepresented groups or minorities responsible for diversity and inclusion. The problems need to be understood and acknowledged and embraced by everyone. And that's why I can stand here and say we're not perfect, but it's something we embrace and acknowledge and invest in organizationally as a topic that requires that commitment from every leader. And from my perspective, especially in product. Because in product, you not only make decisions that guide the roadmap and work your teams do, you make decisions that guide the way your customers interact with your products. And that fundamentally affects the long-term health, success, and scalability of your organization. So as I started today by saying, we have to open this dialogue, and it's something as product owners I hope we can especially keep in our minds and active in our agendas. And I hope you learned something today that you'll be able to implement and that it sparked maybe an idea of your own. We're here to build a 100-year company. We know diversity in product is the best way to make that happen. Thank you. So I believe we have some time for questions, and there's, again, our mic runners that are in the audience. So throw up your hand if you have a question. I'm happy to take a few and give you my 2 cents. We've got one over there.
Thanks.
Hi, hi there. Thanks for your talk. That was great. Can you talk more about, so two things. Can you talk more about the strongly held, but strong opinions, but weakly held, how to bridge that kind of thing? And two, how did you solve the credit card problem for people who don't have access to it?
Great questions. So strong opinions, weakly held. You know, as tech-enabled organizations, we're all trying to move very quickly. And that means often we have to get comfortable at making product decisions with 80% of the information. And the usual thing with 80% of the information is you're hoping you've covered enough that you can make a strong judgment call of how to move forward, and that someone has to be enabled to make that decision. But the thing is, the 20% can sometimes be pretty important. And that's things that you learn either over time from shipping something or from new perspectives coming to the table. And for us, by stating strong opinions weakly held as a value held across our product organization, it makes it comfortable for people to understand, and as a product leader for me to acknowledge that I made that decision with only 80% of the information available at that point in time. So it's a facet of changing our culture so people feel comfortable questioning things that they see already in practice. Because you would think, well, a product leader made that decision, it was made a while ago, it must have been the right decision. And that's the attitude that we want to be able to counteract and to acknowledge that moving quickly means we won't always have the right information. Now, your credit card question, we're still working on. Yeah. Question there in the back.
Satish, I think we're taking one more question.
Okay. There's one hand there if we can get a mic, or feel free to stand up and.
That was an inspiring presentation.
Thank you.
And I have one question. Like, how often do you evaluate customer demands are changing? And how do you know when to evaluate them?
Yeah, great question. For us, there's, with the number and spread of customers we have to have kind of an always-on pipeline of information. And it's just different levels of depth or that we can collect that at. So as a simple example, once a year we do a massive merchant survey where we talk to tens of thousands of our customers and have people that actively bring feedback and information forward. And on the other side, we have 1,000+ people that talk to customers every single day as a part of customer support and our guru teams. And we've built ways for them to bring information and insight back to the table in the ways we build products. And these are two very different but very powerful sources. And in between, we're doing regular interviews and testing and conversations with our customers when we're building different products. So customer demands is and feedback is a lifeblood of a product organization. And for us, it's about acknowledging that there's different types of information at different levels of certainty. And we're always trying to take that into the process. But for us, it's not just what they think of the product, but for us to understand how they think about themselves, and that those actual profiles and segments of customers shifting year over year as our product grows. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Satish.
Appreciate it.
That was fantastic.